recording and everything is working. All right. Sorry about that wait. And so I guess we should probably start to say, you know, this video is just for video's sake, right? I mean, there's no editing or anything involved in it.
Hmm.
I don't know what, yeah, so I guess we'll start to do that. And do you want me to just start?
Oh, okay. Usually before you've been counting me down, so I think you
Okay,
give me the front.
and we go in live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Today on our Breakfast Club,
We have how to motivate an underperforming, it says employee, but I'm changing it to kid.
Americans give a lot.
Quick learners do these things differently.
GPS prison
7 things House of Cards has taught me.
and playing with our genes. All that plus our recommendations coming up next.
Welcome to our Breakfast Club, where we're here to bring you some new perspectives and witty insight, a little bit of banter here on Kurt's birthday. Happy birthday, Kurt, and enjoy the show. Welcome to our Breakfast Club.
Hey everybody, it's episode 17 here on our Breakfast Club. And as always, I am your co-host Kurt Ochberger.
And I'm Chandra Ochberger.
And we're going to give you some stories and recommendations today, like we always do. Chandra, why don't you take it away with the first story?
All right, here we go. So, how to motivate underperformer. The title is How to Motivate Underperforming Employee, and I have basically come to the conclusion that everything that applies to running a great company also applies to running a good household.
There's a strong corollary there, yeah.
There really is. And you know what? People don't talk about it at all, and there's these debates about mompreneurs and entrepreneurs and um, the difference. But I tend to think that the correlation is very, very high. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started and let you know that you can just totally substitute management for parent and employee for child. And number one is find the root cause. If your employee is a bad fit for the job, that's on you.
Okay.
So if the employee's mistakes are angering you, tap your managers to contribute to a review of the person. But, sorry, that I was on the wrong one. Oh, back up. If your employee is a bad fit for the job, that's on you. If he lacks necessary skill, that's on you. These causes for underperformance can be fixed with training. There also might be misunderstanding of your expectations. And this is huge. And it's huge for raising little people to grow up to be big people, and also how your interactions go. And that's setting expectations. And basically, it's not so much training like training on
Hmm.
what is expected of a person within a family, within a business, within anything. And all of these basically really, really hit home. So do you want me to just read through them and then we can talk about them, or
No, well, I'll comment on each. So I think you if you
sorry, coaster.
if you expect someone to do something, be it an employee or a child, make sure that they have the tools to do it, right?
Yeah.
And and if they don't, train them, right? Or well, you have two options: either train them how to do it, or don't expect them to do it, right? Um, so yeah, that's a perfect example right off the bat of um, how employees and children can be can be the same. I just continue. I'm sorry, Abby. We're gonna have to let you go.
Just, no, stop
We have a
it.
generous severance package, or not.
Yeah, no, so that's the other part of it, right?
We're outsourcing your job to Mexico.
Stop
They're just
it.
cheaper. What can I tell you?
Well, and you can't fire your kids, so, and nor can they fire us, right? So it's making making it the best possible situation.
And
Make
they
sure.
can't quit.
So
So
number two is make sure you're objective, Daddy. It is important to make sure you're not approaching the matter with bias. If the employee's mistakes are angering you, tap your managers to contribute to a review of the person's work. Um, and this is too, right? If something that our children are doing are angering us, or another person, you need to again reevaluate what the expectations are, whether they know what they are, and how they're feeling about it, so that you can adapt and adjust. Start a conversation. Now that you have collected unbiased information, it's time to talk with the underperformer. Tell him or her what you have observed, how their actions are affecting the team and company or family, and stress that you are available to help. So
yeah,
that
which is something. So this is something that just is never, well, it's not done enough in the corporate world, right? Um, where they just so even reviews, right? So we have annual reviews of what we're supposed to get at my company, and they're frequently, almost always overdue. So I mean, a manager has, and even at the lowest level. So it's not like a vice president or somebody who's in charge of 100 people has to make time for my. It's like a person who has is in charge of two, three people. Uh, Once a year, can't find the time to do a review, and it's just it's crazy, right? It makes
mm,
no sense. And I've been pretty lucky in that my reviews are usually only a month or two late, but there are people that are 6 months, 9 months late. I mean, you only have a review once every 12 months. If you're 9 months late, you're basically missed a year. And
yes.
then of course when they finally get done, or they're so late that they just totally rubber stamp it, and you get like all the way down the middle or a little bit, and it's like, well, you could have, if you were just going to do that, you could have done it a day before the 12 month, like on my
Hmm.
review date. What? So, yeah. And I know that this happens in a lot of companies where, well, it has happened in virtually every company that I've worked at. Either there is no review process at all, if it's like the smaller companies that I've worked for, or, yeah, it's a bigger corporation, so it's mandated, and just managers, for whatever reason, just absolutely abhor. It's like the biggest fear of managers, I feel like, is somehow sitting down with your employees and telling them how they're doing, good or
Yeah,
bad. And it's not like we have nightmare, like we have a great company, and like everybody that I work with in my company is awesome. So
hmm
the review should be as easy as possible, but
hmm
somehow they just can't.
Well, I mean, I think innately not the managers, but reviews and discussing these things trigger some sort of conflict, right? Or there's a possibility of a conflict happening, or
Yeah,
a disagreement,
disagreement of
which
how.
makes people uncomfortable, right? I mean, because there's and also some form of negotiation by the end of it, right? So there are things that yeah, usually come out of that generally make people uncomfortable. So I can see why people avoid, or on a manager's level, why it's something that it's hard to get to doing. However, it's so imperative for your team and your family and everything else too. And it's something I need to work on, as far as letting know, letting everyone know what my expectations are, or, how I feel about something, but also how everybody's performing. Is everybody doing their job for
Mhm.
the family? And that includes me, and I'm talking on a family level, but I think it just all goes through and through, and not being afraid of that
I'm
of
sorry.
that
I'm sorry,
conflict.
Chandra. We're gonna have to let you go.
No, you don't get to fire me either.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, till death do us part, and I'm not dying.
See, the correlation breaks down at a certain point, but all right. Is there more?
Yes,
Was there more on the
and the
list?
fact that one, you don't get paid for this stuff outside of,
You get paid in love,
yes, well, you
hugs
do.
and
You create. I
kisses,
mean, there's something to be said about the wealth created from a family.
happiness.
I have my laugh bank, and it has to have added years onto my life on how much I laugh. Uh, more laughter than tears. So, but it's just stuff that you need, even whether uncomfortable or not. You need to discuss these things. So, starting a conversation is very, very important, and coach the employee to lay out the plan. If the employee is not interested in being coached or child, not interested in being
I
parented,
am not interested in being coached.
then there's nothing you can do to change their performance, and it's decision time. If some says if someone says I am who I am or implies that they're not going to change, then you've got to make a decision whether you can live with the issue and at what cost. So I would, as far as parenting goes, I would say this is where you have to really, really do the hard work and dive down and see why a child is being very confrontational or just putting up that wall and shutting down. And they do that, and they're people. And if once they shut down, you cannot, I mean, you can't yell it into them, you can't nag it into them, you can't ground, like
Grounded into them.
at least, with our children who I have no idea why they're so stubborn, zero idea. But it has to be a conversation, and you have to drill down, like, why is this, why are you so adamant about this? And it could be something that you've never even thought of, and that's what I've learned a lot from the kids, that they're seeing it from a totally different perspective. I mean, they're way down here, but and from every level they're seeing a lot of life situations from a perspective that we've totally forgotten about, or our life experience comes behind that. And I would say the same thing goes with an employee, right? Any person. And you have to kind of see it from, if you're going to be a good manager or parent or anything, you have to put yourself in their situation a little bit and then try and get them to see whether something's unsafe, or whether that's going to turn them into a jerk in the future, or all these like lifelong things. But you have to work with the person and see why that wall is up, at least in a family. And then, if it's an employee and it's somebody who just can't change,
You have
then
more options.
carry on,
Yeah.
and that's,
Find a replacement.
yeah, exactly.
Make a replacement family.
Can't make a replacement. Um, Follow up and monitor progress. You need to follow up with the employee. All your work will be for nothing unless you monitor their progress. And this goes back to, the reviews as well. Um, but yeah, keeping an open dialogue and making sure that, ask them if they have a superior they trust who can help them track their work and report to you confidently. Or basically, I mean, this is something that I think every human being should learn, and it's something I've had to, I mean, I'm trying to work on this, and it's just monitoring progress, as well as, okay, you have to come in here and be like, okay, what do you, I mean, to basically be my project manager and be like, this is what we need, stop with that idea, or what have you. And if I'm stuck on something,
Yeah.
basically having someone there to push you on. And it's the same, teaching, when we were going through teaching Abby how to read, or math, working through math problems. And the same with Atlas. It's just basically, what are you stuck on? How can we work through this? Or should you just, how that progress is going.
Yeah, but you're
So
also largely talking about goal setting, right? So it's, which is that in both worlds, in the corporate world and the family world, it's, what are what are we trying to, what's the next thing we want to accomplish, like for you, right? Or what is the next thing you want to accomplish? How are you going to achieve that? And is what you're doing right now leading you towards that goal, or leading you away from that goal, or just getting in the way, right? So it's it's that in of itself too, which is great when you're talking about children, is just sort of one of these fundamental um, abilities that you can feed into them, right? The
Hmm.
ability to set goals and achieve them. Um, it's it's just a skill that if you can get that through your childhood, you're going to be so much better off
Yeah.
in life, in your work, in your personal life, just anything. Being able to look at all the most successful people in the world, right? And they'll have one thing in common: they can set goals and achieve them. That's
Yes.
for whatever, athletes, business, whatever. Name a thing. The most successful people are going to have at least that one thing in common. They
Yeah.
can they can achieve their goals, and like single-minded, like this to almost to a
Yeah.
degree. But
It's interesting. I was listening to an interview with Tim Ferriss, 4 Hour Work Week, and he mentioned, he was like, how much difference there is in expectation or execution, how important execution is, as opposed to um like just like the idea. I can't think of the word, but like just executing an idea. If you can't take action on it, then it doesn't mean anything, right? None of your intentions, none of that is okay. And it's the same, like taking taking action and moving forward, and it's just very interesting. But yes, it will. You will not be stuck with the mental blocks that am constantly trying to work through to get motivated, or just get over fear of success or fear of whatever fear, and move forward and implement and pivot and keep on going. And every person needs to do that. And then the last one is, um, take action if needed. After all this work, if there's no improvement, it's time to change your demeanor. If the employee starts to take advantage of your kindness, mentoring, and coaching, you can't stand for it. At some point, you have so quote, at some point you have to leave coaching and get into consequences speech. You might say, let me be very clear that this is the third time that this has happened since your behavior hasn't changed. I need to explain the consequences. And that is like parenting 101, right? It's just like, this is what happens. You keep on doing this. Okay, now we need to really, really talk about, look, there are consequences for your actions. And I remember Abby at like age 3, she's like, I hate consequences, like, or repercussions, because that's
hmm
what we would say. Like, you do this, you do A, B is going to happen. And it just works on every level. So, um, and then reward them for changes is the very last one. I'm sorry. If the employee turns their performance around, you should reward them. Don't leave them feeling like the axe is ready to drop on their neck at any point. At some point, if the non-performer has improved, be sure to take them off of the death spiral. You want you want a team that can make mistakes and learn from them. And yeah, so um, that's it. And we've not been attributing this. I found this article in Inc. magazine, and it's by Will Yakowitz. So
Nice. Okay. My first story comes from Richard Eisenberg on nextavenue.org. And I wanted to start, since it's Monday and whatnot, in the beginning of the week, on a high note. And so the story is about charitable giving by Americans and how it's on the rise. Donations are up overall, but two sectors are flagging. So there's always what would be the opposite of a silver lining for these stories. Um, and now for a glimmer of uplifting news. Americans are opening their wallets and increasing their charitable giving. This is all according to a study by Giving USA. So this foundation, every year, their job is to like measure charitable giving. in the United
Hmm.
States. And so every year they come out with this big annual report. Last year, in 2013, we're talking $335 billion Americans gave to charity.
Wow.
And of course, this is again just what they can track, right? And
Hmm.
which is up 4.4% from 2012, which is that, when you're talking all of America, 4 point, small single digit percentages are actually, quite the increase. So up 4.4%, and that marks the fourth straight year of increased giving. This, of course, comes from the low point of 2007 and the recession and the crash and
Hmm.
the mortgage crisis. So that was sort of, everything was going great until 2007. It, dropped off dramatically, and then every year, I mean, literally not. We had a down year, 1 year for such a huge crisis, and then every year since 2007, it's been going up and up and up and up. Um, and so they're saying that by next year, if it at this rate, by next year, we'll be back up to where we were, or a little bit ahead of where we were before the crash. So 7 years to sort of recover from that, from a charity standpoint. Um,
Every,
so yeah, and then that was before that. That was the peak. So $349 billion was the peak right before 2007, and we're at 335 last year. That's a lot of money, right?
yeah.
335 billion, a third of a trillion, if you wanted to put it another way. Um, it just goes. So the article talks about how this is just giving. It's something that I don't think is mentioned enough, right? When we talk about America and how we give so much more than other. If you want to compare us to other
Well, it's
Western
part of our culture.
industrialized nature, right?
It's
Yes,
very, it's, that we are the only country that it's like this. So,
a part of our national DNA. The
yes,
article says.
that, and with proud, yes, American proud. That's something I'm very, very proud of.
Right, and unfortunately, this particular article doesn't. I mean, we'll talk about a couple other things where the increase is coming from, but this particular article doesn't discuss why America is bigger than. I mean, okay, it's part of our national DNA, but why? Like, why do we give so much more to charity than basically any other country, and especially any other industrialized country?
Mm.
Um, they do. So let's talk about some of the places where giving is up. Corporations, so we slammed on corporations last week pretty hard in a couple of different stories. But the good news is that corporations give, uh, American corporations give a lot of money across the board to charitable organizations. And then, of course, also foundations and bequests, in people's wills. Um, but there was also, so that being aside, and those areas are all up. So all of those corporations, foundations, and bequests all gave more this year than they did, or in 2013 than they did in 2012. But there was a $9.69 billion increase by individuals. Um, so it's not just the corporations and they're making so much more money, so they'll shell out a little bit. They can kick a little extra from under the couch cushions to 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 charities. It's actually individuals as well that are giving
Mm.
more as a group. And this they suspect that this is because individuals' finances are finally increasing, right? Or they have been increasing after
I
the crash.
Do you mind if I, excuse, so I think it's something, it's a combination, right? I mean, people start to do better, then they start to give more. But I think it's also when people go through financial struggle, they tend to give more as well.
They can
Like,
understand. They can relate, right?
yes, you can
Yeah,
relate better.
absolutely.
And they say that, people from a lower middle class donate more money, they give more on the street to homeless people. They give
Uh,
more money
on a
out
percentage basis,
as their,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
as far as their counterparts for people in the upper, in the same level, but just on the other end of the spectrum. And it's very interesting, but yes, people can relate. So go through this crazy recession, people almost lose everything and then are more giving, right?
Yep.
So,
Um, in particular, individuals in particular, while the study doesn't break down giving by age, they do say that it suggests it's safe to suggest that a lot of this giving is by boomers. So the baby boomers are they give at a much higher percentage than the rest of the population. Nearly three-quarters of boomers make charitable contributions. So 75% of baby boomers are contributing, and
Awesome.
they represent almost half, 43% of total U.S. giving. Um, so that's that. They say they also, besides giving more, they also tend to target, or I guess research where they're giving. So boomers often make donations where they feel confident their giving is having an impact. So that's another thing. I mean, you can talk about just increase in dollars, but unfortunately, from my personal experience, not all nonprofits and charities are created equal,
Yeah,
right? Unfortunately.
definitely.
And there are definitely, there are ways, there are places to give that will have a more immediate impact. I mean, obviously, any kind of giving is good. It's good for you, the person giving, as much or, sometimes more than the person you're giving to. So I'm not going to, slam on anybody giving to whoever you want to give to, right? Um, but it's interesting, right, that the baby boomers and coming out of that sort of generation are looking at where they give. It says the study survey says that their boomers are planning to give more over the next 12 months, and let's so and so just in general, that's positive news. We'll finish it up with the where giving isn't rising. Of course, not everything is rosy on the charity front. Donations to international affairs focused charities slid 6.7%
Wow.
last year,
Yeah.
and
Well,
corporate giving to those international organizations fell 1.9%. So more so with individuals, they're just not. And they again they speculate that it's these the international stories that we generally see on the media, see from the media about volatility, in Africa and Asia and basically all over the world. And also, there's been some scandals, periodic scandals they call them, such as the Cambodian sex trafficking
ugh,
activist who stepped down because she faked her entire life story, and on and on. Right? Those stories always kind of come out, like they said, periodically, where some bastion of a particular group, um, you know, it lies or makes
mm,
stuff up or is living in a luxury lifestyle, right?
yeah.
And that those are across the board. For no, not I'm not attributing that to any particular charity or anything, right?
Mm,
It's just all over the board, international and like was it the breast cancer one, right? And they just
mm,
there's just all of these that you hear every once in a while, and of course every time one of those comes out, then giving to that particular area is going to decline. Um, and then so that was the one place where it's going down, and the other place is going down is giving to religious organizations.
interesting.
Um, was relatively flat, they say, in 2013, so no really noticeable up or down. But it says that continues a trend of religion being a smaller and smaller part of the giving pie. In 2013, 30. So that being said, before we start, getting too upset about that, 31% of gifts went to the religious sector. So that's in 2013. So they're still getting a third of all that $300 billion. 100 billion of it is going
That seems pretty even to me. What it probably used to be a lot more, huh?
a decade. Well, thank you for asking. A decade ago, 57% of all charitable
Wow.
donations in the country went to really. That's two-thirds, right? So it's effectively almost 60%. So it's gone down by half, and this isn't 40 years ago or 30, 20, right? This is 10 years ago.
Mm,
So you're talking 2004, 60%. Wow. Um, so in 10 years, down by half. What's going to happen in the next 10 years, right?
mm.
Um, we speculate it's directly tied to attendance being down at houses of worship. Um, and then also that churches, synagogues, and mosques, generally speaking, have been very slow to adopt other solicitation strategies. Read, the internet. Whereas almost every other charity is online and accepting online donations, most churches aren't doing that, right? They don't have
Mm-hmm.
apps, they don't have online, giving most of, I'm generalizing, right? And of course that's having an impact.
Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, overall good news and just interesting. Just one thing for right close after Fourth of July and celebrating America and everything that's great about America. Well, there you go. I mean, we give more to charities and not just our charities, right? You would expect if it was, yeah, we're giving less, but we give internationally. We give to everyone around the world, and including our own um, organizations.
Very cool. Very cool. Yes, I'm all about philanthropic spirits. So it's very, very cool. Um, all right. So my next story is 10 things quick learners do differently to pick up anything. And it was just a cool little article. I mean, it's Motivated Monday, right? So I'm kind of getting back into this where I started this at the beginning when we started recording our episodes. So now I'm just going to keep with it. And if you've been listening all along, you know we love to learn. And I like to single out and see like what makes us different than some people who just don't seem to catch on to things as quickly or maybe not early adopters or whatever, but these are some quick tips to basically learn anything and just go through. So, never before has there been so much information readily available at our fingertips. Never before has there been so many free resources to learn new skills and expand our minds. But with this unprecedented access to knowledge, never before has there been so much confusion about the advice one ought to follow. So, yeah, it's just kind of talking to the 80/20 rule. And I think this comes down to basically there are a million different ways to do the same thing, right?
Different
So,
ways, yeah, from when you're talking about learning in particular,
or
right?
yeah, so like basically anything, every single thing. The reason why people have, I noticed at a pretty young age, I could put together stuff, and people would be like, "Oh, I remember in college, like my friend got a futon, and she was just like, she could not figure it out. The instructions were just all a mess, and and just figured it out. And it's just because a lot of things, like instructions, are written by one person's perspective, right? That's just like this step by step, but that doesn't necessarily, unless it's IKEA furniture, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be in that order.
Especially if it's IKEA furniture.
So it says use the 80/20 rule. In 1906, an Italian economist observed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. Taking the observation further, he noticed that 80% of the peas in his garden were produced from 20% of the pods. Years later, economist Joseph M. Warren called this 80/20 rule the Pareto principle. And so
Yeah.
productivity wise, if you do anything business, you all you hear is 80/20 rule, 80/20 rule.
Yep.
But
It happens a lot in our, in when you're designing software or process automation, like I'm doing, we know that we're going to spend 80% of our time on 20% of the solution. Like we're going to knock out 80% of the solution in the first day, almost the first
Mhm.
week. And then we're going to spend sometimes months on the 20% of like specific things that people want, specific requirements. And yep, we see it all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. It says find the 80/20 rule in the subject of your studies. What what are the main ideas? What are the most important elements that yield the biggest return on investment? Start with these questions.
Like look at like language learning and things like that in particular,
Mhm.
right? Where there are I read an article about or things about learning language, and you can focus on like the 20% most used words that actually can get you so much further in a language, right? You don't need to learn every single word. Right? You don't need to learn every word. If you're trying to learn English, like go through the dictionary, because we as Americans don't use 80% of the dictionary. We
Mhm.
use saying 20% is probably generous, right? We use 20% of the English language day to day to day. So if you were trying to, and that's all humans, right?
Hmm.
Everybody who has a language uses 20% of their language every day, and the other 80% sporadically throughout their life, if at all. So if you're trying to learn a language, focus on and a lot of the software nowadays, the apps and things that are Rosetta Stone and things like that, they're teaching you languages. That's exactly what they do. They figured that out. And so when you start doing these lessons online or through the apps, they're teaching you the 20% that that are used the most often. And then yeah, maybe they hit you with the other ones in advance, but they want to get you that at first. And the other studies, same thing.
Awesome. I am sorry. My mic is doing insane stuff, and we are totally live. So live TV problems. Uh, view failure as view failure as feedback. So we often try to avoid failure at all costs. We typically engage in pastimes we feel competent in and try not to venture out of our comfort pits for fear of looking like a dork. I don't mind looking like a dork, obviously, but we play it safe. This isn't the way we've always been. We, when learning how to talk, we would mumble and sing and talk googly gog for hours on end to anyone who would listen. When first learning to walk, we would crawl and stand and fall and so on, right? So it's something that's learned to, which I think is interesting that they point on this that fear of failure because you wouldn't learn anything as a child, right? Going into learning how to speak, learning how to walk, learning how to do anything unless you were okay with not being great at it at first, right? So, um,
Yeah,
now have.
this was the big challenge that we faced with both our kids, but Abby in particular. At least I remember it more with Abby of
Mhm.
just being so afraid to do, not even willing to try something because there's a what if she failed or what if she couldn't do it perfectly, right? Like drawing, the simplest things. Like, well, I don't want to try drawing that because I might not draw it exactly how she sees it in her head or how she wants it to be, and just so upset that things might not be perfect or don't come out perfect that it would just why even bother if you can't do it 100% right? Why even try?
Yep.
And it took her a while to get over that. Hello.
Sorry again. Um, so yes, she draws now. She's quite a good artist, but it did took her. I thought she would never learn how to read and she would never learn how to draw because it wasn't the Mona Lisa
Yeah, the
off the bat,
reading.
right?
Yeah,
And
the
then the
reading
reading it was just like
especially.
she was like it's just silly words. See, she would look at a page and be like, "See, silly words. I don't get it." So, uh yes, natural born perfectionists. But so I think in some people that's a little bit stronger. And then simplify. And this is one of my favorite quotes they have on here. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, and that's by Leonardo da Vinci. And the idea of a superhuman learner who reads 15 books on different subjects at once while learning 10 different languages and writing 3 novels is a myth. Multitasking leads to poor performance.
Mm.
And yes, I understand that, but in everyday life, as I've stated before, to get through parenthood and all that stuff, you have to, and we live in a more and more multitasking world, but focus on what you're if there's something you really really need your focus to learn, then they say, you know,
Yeah,
go
absolutely.
with the blinders.
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? That many people have. I've seen many articles on, multitasking, and we got the phones and the tablets and the driving and the parenting and whatever. And yeah, I guess you can say that's the reality of our lives. But Leo's words still hold true, right? That comes at a cost. I guess most people have accepted that cost, but you're absolutely right. Like they'll say I'll keep using the learning a language example. I mean, the best way to do it is just total immersion, right? You get in there. I read the best school in the world for learning a language is the Mormon missionary school in Utah, and they just churn these guys out. And I mean, they have the absolute best program, but you're there. You're just that's what you're learning, right? And it's like a boot camp, right? Same thing you could say with soldiering. If you you know the Marines have figured it out, give me 3 months where all you're gonna do is learn how to be a Marine to the exclusion of everything else in the rest of the world. You're completely isolated and just focused on doing that one thing for 3 months. And guess what? Well, they turn out good soldiers. So um, there's a switching cost to multitasking. Every time you go to do something else, it costs you a little bit. Just
Hmm.
as far as impedance, right? And yeah, you're still gonna. I feel like you can still learn things, but it just is gonna take that much longer. And couple that with sort of, I feel like humans, and maybe I'm speaking just for myself, but of things that take longer just increase the chance that I'm not going to finish, right? um, or fully get to whatever level you need to if you're talking about a language or something like that. Um, so that's the cost
Yeah.
of multitasking, and that's why you can um, perhaps not learn as many skills as deeply as you need to. Like I know a lot about I know a little about a lot of
Hmm.
things, and some deeper than others. But the ones that I have a deeper knowledge of are the ones where I've just you know
Focused. Yeah,
done that for
definitely.
days, weeks. And I'll even, yeah, programming, but also like games and things, right? The games that I'm really good at. I play all kinds of games,
Yeah.
but the ones I'm really good at are the ones where I'm totally engrossed and I lock myself in the movie theater and just play them, right?
Right. Yeah, and I totally agree. And I mean I get obsessed with something and then I just learn it, right? I mean I think I learned how to, I learned CSS and HTML because you started a website, in 2006 and you wanted a chalkboard and things moving around and I never designed a website in my life and I just like hunkered down and focused on that and uh, it was very, very cool. I wish I still had that code because it was just basically from scratch, but
We had less kids then. It's important to know.
yeah, and but it was just like through the night, burning the midnight oil. Even then, just because I was so obsessed with it, and I just needed it to happen. So I get that part of it, but totally agree. Um, oh, I love this one. Ask why 5 times to dig deeper. So when you see someone performing a magic trick, we're usually presented with 3 acts: the pledge, the turn, and the prestige. An ABC if you like. To the magician, however, there are rarely just 3 acts, but dozens in between A and B, and there's further A1, A2, A3, which the audience never sees. Good learners look deeper than what is merely presented on the surface. Quick learners ask why multiple times, even when they think they know the answer. They probe further. Knowing is not enough. We must understand. Like that, that quote. Yeah, doers act, or if you know, you act on it. If you understand, you teach it, or something like that. But the next time you're presented with a subject you want to learn, ask why 5 times to dig deeper. And I love this, and I hear this over and over again in all of my business talks and things of that nature. And it is true, diving down when you're trying to get into an audience, your audience's head, or any direction you want to go. But I think it's why kids are so fantastic at learning, right? That's all they do. They're like, how does that work? They're just constantly asking why, why. And so you have to dig down. I mean, I know I've become smarter since having kids because I have to explain words that I've never even thought. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like Atlas has never asked why. He always asks, what does that mean? It's like
Mhm.
full sentence of just being like, no, I really want to know, or you can't say mm-hmm, or you have to say yes or no. It is like,
What is a
let
couple,
me
right?
know.
Like,
So is it something else? And there's that possibility, but it's what makes them really, really, all children, really, really great learners. And as annoying as it is as a parent sometimes to just constantly have to ask that, it's we should learn from that. We should be doing the same thing when we want to learn something or start something new that we want to be great at, right?
Yeah, and that's a great example. Like Atlas is a perfect example of, I mean, boiling it down to the just the most simplistic example of, if you told a while ago when he was younger, if you told Atlas, "Oh, I'll be there in a couple minutes," like, okay, what is a couple? Like, you have to define. I want. He was expecting, a discrete number, and a couple just wasn't gonna fly, right? So, couple needed to be, you had to tell him that means two, or that means, or if you said a few, what does a few mean, and things like that, right? He is he's the digger. He wants to know what everything means in discrete, knowable terms, and so you can never really use colloquialisms or phrases, turns of phrase with him that until he understood. Now he knows. Well, he's defined in his world that a couple means two, and so
Well,
that's
it
okay.
couple
That's
does mean
okay.
two technically, right? I mean, a couple is two. Like it's a couple.
Yes,
So
but yeah, I think a lot of kids or people, you could say a couple just means like wait, or like, just
yeah,
hold on later, right? And
and
for him,
children are
it's
very, very
120
literal. So,
seconds.
teaching them those, you know, that as well. Like everything is not literal, but it makes you choose your words more wisely and saying, okay, a few instead of a couple. But it's that digging down of why. So keep a positive attitude. Positive psychologist Martin Siegelman has done lots of research on learned optimism. While everyone has a range, everyone can improve their level of optimism. If you want to be a quick learner, optimism should be one of the first things you learn. Optimists don't feel happy all the time. Optimists feel the same amount of negative emotions as pessimists. Thank you. The difference is that optimists bounce back quicker. If you're faced with a setback, a rejection, or a failure, all of which are inevitable in the learning process, the more likely you'll be to interpret it as helpful feedback. We can learn to become more optimistic by simply challenging our instinctive thought process. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, well, he talks that, especially
I wondered how you would feel about this.
that first sentence of everyone has a range of optimism. Okay. Oh no, no, the very first thing is he's a positive psychologist. Is that his actual like title, or is he just like he's positive? He's a
he
psychologist who's positive
well,
about the things he's doing. Is he? Is his title like, "Hi, I'm Kirk. I'm a positive psychologist"? Like, is that
Well,
what he
no, because
described?
those aren't that's not a proper noun. So it's just like
This is my
positive
partner Joe. He's a
psychologist.
negative psychologist. So
Oh, pessimism, right? Um, but he's done lots of research on learned optimism, which is apparently, and it's a link in the in the article, which means that's an entire
yeah,
uh,
I just
valley of study, correct?
I'm fascinated. Like, how do you teach someone to be optimistic?
Well,
Uh,
and I think this explains it really, really well, right? It's moving past your failures and moving past that.
yeah, but how do you teach someone to do that? Right? I understand what optimism is,
Apparently,
but I don't know that I'm pessimistic that you can teach optimism. Is
and
that?
I am optimistic that you can.
And I feel
Go
like, but
figure.
that being said, I feel like I'm an example of this, right? Um, where I feel like now so today I'm 39, and I feel like I'm more optimistic today than I ever was. Certainly was earlier in my life, and even like I feel like I'm a more optimistic person now. What I can't tell you is how that came about. You know. Um, Learning from failures, certainly. I guess. I mean, I have to sit down, and that'd be a whole show, or maybe I could talk to. I got to talk to the positive psychologist to unlock the mysteries of that. But that's the thing. It's fascinating how because it's certainly how you want to be in life, right? This is another thing that you want to teach your children. You want to you want your friends and everyone, your family to. It's just a better way to go go through life, being optimistic than pessimistic.
Well, I mean,
I believe.
You get to surround your people. People walk away from you if you're negative, right? I mean, like you have. I think in order to,
Unless they're negative too, but yeah, in general.
yeah, and even that, and even those bounce off of each other, right? I mean, it's like even positive people, positive charges bounce off each other, and so do and negative people do. But they, yeah, I think in order to be successful and to learn and to do anything, and I think learning is part of that, right? Like the more you understand learning, I think you're probably more positive because you have like an awesome life, an awesome wife, and two
That's
awesome
true.
kids, right?
I do surround myself with awesome people. That's true. That's a key. Yeah, and we live in a nice house in a nice town. Like I don't want for anything,
Yeah.
right? I get to do the projects I want. I get, my job.
We're doing this show, right? I mean, like, but
Yeah,
but that's also these are also things that we just because we know if we really want to do something, we have to do it, right? Like just I think it's part of it. It's like this. It's the cycle of being positive and learning. I mean, because this article is about learning. The fact that we can learn anything and everyone can, it,
yeah.
it
Well,
keeps you more positive.
and to me, in the end, it comes down to philosophy. I mean, if you believe things are going to happen, the things that are going to happen to you, to the world, whatever, are going to happen regardless of how you think. So, like, I don't. So, I guess what I'm saying is, I don't believe I can change the world with my mind. Um, but right, so whatever's going to happen to me today, tomorrow, next year, next 10 years is going to happen. So, that being the case, if you subscribe to that theory, then you have a choice of either thinking pessimistically or thinking optimistically. So why not think the best, right? Why not expect the best or hope for the best versus, I guess, hoping for, like why would you choose to hope for the worst and be like, oh man, 39, my life's gonna be over by the time I'm 40, and oh everything sucks, and because you constantly choose that every day when you wake up, right? Are you gonna have a good day or bad day? You can't control the events that are gonna happen, but you can hope for the best and think for the best. And there are some studies that say that people with positive, it's all that we talked about the reticular activating system before, right? Like way early on in the episodes, like
Hmm.
1, 2, or 3, and by thinking positively, you you open up your brain, right? You are telling. So for listeners who haven't been diligently listening to every episode, the reticular activating system is like your brain's filter, right? So you tell your brain what's important to you at any given time, and your brain kind of is open more to that, to seeing, or if you flip through an ad and oh you I need new I know I knew no I know I need new tires on my car. I flip through an ad, oh sure enough tires are on sale, right? Well, they were always on sale, but you just notice them more because, well, same thing with, so if you go through life with a positive outlook, you're going to see the more positive things. There was a study like with horoscopes, right? And that's why generally most horoscopes are positive. Like, oh, well, you know what? My horoscope said that I was going to have a good. So you can, like, there are ways to trick humans into, feeding into their brain to expect positive things or expect negative things. And they did that with horoscopes and things, with people that if you believe that that's what's going to happen, um, you could kind of follow that path.
If you see, you are an optimist.
Yeah.
Maybe you should like, yeah, become like a doctor of ophthalmology. No, that doesn't.
No. How about a well? I could do that, or I could become a positive psychologist.
There you
Apparently,
go. Yes. Right
I'm
on.
sorry. I only take positive clients.
Yeah, well, yes. That's like I'm in that boat. Yes. Uh, okay. Practice what has been learned, and it says theory without application is a huge waste of time. Benny Lewis, author of a popular language learning blog, said that he lived in Spain for 6 months and attended Spanish courses, yet still had terrible Spanish. He made the simple decision to start speaking it every day, even if he looked like an idiot. In less than 3 months, he was fluent.
Yep.
We are physical beings. In order to internalize lessons, we have to physically go through the motions. Imagine trying to learn how to play the piano by reading about musical notation or
Hmm.
entering a boxing match after reading up on how to throw a punch.
Yes.
It will never work. There's a reason the saying says practice makes perfect. Nobody ever says reading theory makes perfect. It's really well
Yeah.
done. And yes, right. I mean,
And so yeah, obviously I'm gonna go right back to the language example
mhm,
and like the Mormon missionary school. They don't speak. You get there, you do not speak English, like from day one. Now they understand that you are that first day you are going to be completely lost, but just you pick up a couple words every day. You write some. They like pin vocab words to themselves
mm,
or to like things, right? And they put it up physically, tactilely, because you have to write the card and pin the card and look at the card.
just like
And
kids.
and they're and they have no choice but to hear the words every
Yeah.
single, not every single day, every single minute, right? That's all you hear is whatever language you're preparing for to go on your mission. So and this is, basically without without argument, the best school in the world at teaching people foreign languages. So, you know, learn from the best, right? That's just. But you're right. Like I've watched a ton of football in my life, a ton. Like I've spent, what is it, like 10,000 hours, Malcolm Gladwell, right? Like I'm probably close to that as far as watching TV. Unfortunately, that does not, watching football on TV, that does not make me an expert football player. That makes me an expert TV watcher, right? Because the thing I was practicing physically was sitting in a chair watching television. And I am damn good at that. Don't get me wrong. But, um, you know, if I were to get out on the football field and say, "Oh, we need you to go to the Longhorns. You got to get me on the field," I would be creamed, right, at any position because despite having watched quarterbacks throw the ball for 10,000 hours, uh, I don't do it myself near enough. So, and hey, I can't hear you if you are.
Yeah, I keep on charging. Sorry, you can't see me either, so you can't see me taking off
Can't
my
see you,
headpiece.
hear you. I'm just talking into the ether as far as I know.
So I
But
keep on muting it and charging my mic. I forget that you can't see me, and yeah, of course, like the one I've totally announced. I don't know how many people are watching this right now, but I've put the link on the Facey Spacey, and it's out in the ether. So people are actually watching this. So fun,
this is
good times.
this
I'm
is how
having mic problems.
this is how the sausage is made, folks.
This is how the sausage is made.
All right, so we have time, I think, for my second story,
Okay.
and then we're basically we'll move into recommendations.
Okay, go for it.
So my second story is: Can GPS trackers replace prisons? Argentina may be onto something. So this comes from Carl Franzen on The Verge. It's a short little article, but I wanted to bring it up because I think I'm in love with the idea of it, right? So, well, to a degree. So, as probably most of you are aware, but if you aren't, America incarcerates a higher percentage of its population, 724 people out of every 100,000 adults, than any country in the world. So China, Russia, your Cubas, your Irans. Nope, no, we imprison more of our people percentage wise than any other country. And that there, so we could do a whole show or multiple shows on that and why, and we could do multiple shows on the costs associated with that. But this is looking at one particular way to at least address the cost problem. Um, and because it's very complex, the there right now in Argentina, they sort of, well, I don't know, they don't say when they started doing this, but there's currently a program going on in Argentina, where a study shows that criminals who received GPS tracking bracelets and then were sent home, right, had half the overall recidivism rates. That's a criminal being charged with another crime, compared to criminals who receive prison sentences instead, or I should say, serve their prison sentences in a prison. Half, folks. That's so when you're talking about a country who has a humongous prison population, if you took if there's a solution out there, in this case, what they're positing is that instead of going to jail for your whatever your for nonviolent offender, you can couch it however you want, but sending a targeted percentage of the prison population to sending them home and tracking them with a GPS bracelet, as opposed to sending them to crime school, which is essentially what prison is, where they learn from other arch criminals how to be better criminals. And then, if they, especially if they have a lesser sentence, say a year for a minor crime, they can learn from the lifers and then go out into the world and be better criminals. This and then but then commit more crimes, right? And then go back to jail, and that's that whole recidivism. And that's where recidivism, from the things I've read, comes from. I mean, you're taking a person who maybe had a perfect rate. I worked at one time with a lady who got drunk and killed someone when she was young, like she was 18.
Gosh,
And
that's terrible.
yeah, and spent 6 years in jail. So like from 18 to 24, and so no criminal record, right, folks? This is like she was the middle America white, just suburbanite, daughter of a soccer mom kind of thing, right? Like the nice, you
Oh
would
my
never
God.
know
Oh,
if right, but made one mistake, right, or a series of mistakes in a short time period, if you will, uh, and paid for it, right? But you know, served your time, right? Did whatever, 6 years, and I mean, basically, you took a totally perfect, productive member of society and sent them to crime school, and like, showed her how that. Now, I mean, she like worked through it, and she wasn't like this as far as I know. I didn't spend a lot of time with her, but was able to come out of that and adjust and learn from it, and she went and talked to schools and was doing all
mm,
the right things and stuff. So but she had the stories, right? Like she was smart enough, and like when we did talk about it, which wasn't a lot, like that. Yeah, that's what happens. Like these
hmm
perfectly normal people sometimes don't come out of it and fix their lives and realize what they've done and go talk to schools. Sometimes they just, you know, like, oh well, I spent 6 years around the what society would say is the worst members of our society, and they taught me a trick or two, and so now I'm gonna go out
Well, I would say
do
most of the
things.
time, right? Because there's no, most of these people have no support. They're just trying to survive to begin with, and then there's like that one little, not little, I mean,
Yeah, well
that
then
that's big, but
they
I,
come out of it, and
there are a lot of times where it's
society
not that
completely.
big, right? Where you go to jail for a dime bag and then you can't ever get a job again, right? I
Yeah,
mean, like that's the type of thing that you're just, I just drives me crazy on the people that are these minor infringements on the law, that some laws that are just, they're stupid laws. Sorry to say, but and then they destroy entire lives. I
yeah,
mean, and generations of lives, because there's just like there's this history of just being like, okay, well, this is
and
this is the cycle.
yeah, and don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that she shouldn't be punished,
Hmm
right? Regardless of how squeaky clean she was or whatever. Like she killed someone. That could have been one of my kids, one of my family, whatever. So
Knock on wood.
go be punished, right? but she very easily could have worn an ankle bracelet and been subject to whatever restrictions you wanted to place on her, but still be like a productive member of society, like working a job and paying taxes, and oh by the way, like talking to schools from day one when it was real, right? When it was first, not waiting 6 years and then doing like you could make that a condition of you're going to go to every school in the state and talk to them about your experience or whatever, and just because they were nonviolent offenders or whatever. So, and I'll leave it up to us or whatever to determine what the restrictions or the conditions are for being able to have a GPS tracking you. But that's what I'm talking about. And yeah, your example is even better. Like we know from other stories that almost all of these arrests are for drug things, and I think that is changing in and of itself, and state by state, I guess, is going to have to happen. But yeah, they don't need to be
Yeah, and I mean,
You don't need to be
and
in jail. That
and
doesn't
even if
help.
it is like a harder drug than marijuana, right? It still can be like send somebody to rehab, right? Do not send them to
Yeah.
jail. And the same with, I mean, with the exception of sex offenders, everything else can for a lot of other things. I mean, we're not talking about like the major, murder and sex offenders and things of this nature, but like
Violent
yeah,
offenders.
violent offenders. Like put put the rest of the people, the majority of the people that are in jail, like and give them resources for the money that we're spending. We spend so much money, so much of our tax dollars go to these private jails instead of giving functional, I mean, there's an entire workforce that's sitting in jail that if you just given a chance and some training and a little bit of hope would be just it would be do amazing things. I mean, we have roads that need to be built. We have an entire infrastructure that needs to be redone in this country. There
Oh,
you go.
don't get me wrong. They're working. I mean, don't
Yeah.
make no mistake about that. They're working for the private companies,
Yeah, and that, but
right?
they're making money
Private
off of it
profits.
instead of
Yes.
the taxpayers who are paying for them to work for the companies, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's just such a crazy system. It's crazy. Craziness.
So
Crazy.
this is one of those stories. I mean, I know it was a short story, but I'd love to hear feedback from
Yeah.
people because I think my view, like I said, I've told you where I'm coming from, but I'd be interested. Like, what would it be okay? You know, tell us what crimes would it be okay to have? You know, people just have a GPS bracelet, if any. You know, what's the problem with this? What's the drawback? Because I have a hard time seeing the drawbacks to sentencing people to wear a GPS bracelet and monitoring them and restricting them, but keeping them out of prison. So
Yeah, I completely agree, but I would love to hear different opinions on this on from the other side and seeing how other people feel about this. Head on over to ourbreakfast.club and leave a comment under any of the any of the podcasts, but this is number 17 and we'll get this up and going, as well as you can just email us at ask@ourbreakfast.club. So we're going to head on over to the tools and
think we have
I,
time for one each. So let's pick
okay.
your favorite.
Are you doing a movie?
I am.
Okay, so my last article that I was unable to talk about was Seven Things the House of Cards Taught Me. So I'm just going to recommend House of Cards as a
Yep.
show to watch, a series, because it's awesome. And if you want to know a little bit about the behind the scenes real political minds and how they work and just all of the just twisted craziness, it's an awesome show. I
Yep.
really, really like it.
And once upon a time in my life, I was in politics, like the real politics,
Yep.
behind the smoke-filled rooms, and so I can personally say that it's they have somebody like
In
me or
politics, right? That's
on their
writing it.
show.
Yep.
Yes, they have a staffer or chief of staff or former campaign worker and things like that, that they're getting great recommendations or tips on how to make the show, because it is very much unfortunately so very much like reality.
Right on.
Okay, and so it's Movie Monday. This is on Mondays. I recommend at least one movie that I think everybody should check out. And this one, because of the sort of time sensitive nature of it, so this I'm recommending a show that is not on Netflix, is not even out in all major theaters, but is coming to select theaters. And then if it gets enough interest, can either go out to all theaters or will come to Netflix or something like that. So I'm almost kind of advocating checking it out or expressing interest in checking it out, so that because I think it's something that everybody needs to see. So the movie is called Ivory Tower. It's a movie about basically the education system, the post-secondary college education system in our country. So we talked about prisons, and maybe you can argue high above or below on the list of problems in America of prisons is our college education system. So tuition rates spiraling out of control, student loan debt surpassing credit card debt in America. And so basically, the tagline Ivory Tower asks: Is college worth the cost. And they go from Harvard to Silicon Valley to all over the country. It's a documentary, and ask the question
Oh, it
and
sounds
explore
awesome.
both sides. Right? It's trying to be. I haven't seen it, so I'll caveat that, but I want to. So it's an independent film, and they have a schedule. If you go to takepart.com, TAKEPART, link in the show notes, /Ivory Tower. They have it's traveling to different theaters. So right now, tomorrow in Chautauqua, New York,
Chautauqua, which is up by
Chautauqua.
Chautauqua. That's where my
Yes.
yeah, Uncle Dave lives.
Okay, so tomorrow in Chautauqua, at the Chautauqua Cinema, it's playing, and then they have a schedule. So Phoenix, Arizona, Minneapolis, Seattle, all throughout the summer. Um, and there's a way to bring the movie to your city. So that's what I was talking about, where you
Oh,
can
cool.
go, it's like sign up and say, hey, if this comes to Austin, which unfortunately for whatever reason Austin isn't on the list, Dallas
Huh.
is. Yeah,
Well,
weird,
let's
right?
get on it, people.
Yeah. So it's a twofold thing. It's something you probably can't watch right now today, but it's something I think everybody should watch. And there's an avenue for you to either see it when it comes to your town or ask for it to come to your town. So
Awesome.
Ivory Tower, and talks about one of America's big problems.
Very, very cool. Well, is that it for us, or
That
are we?
is it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. So sorry about all my mic stuff, at least for this live. I'll try and get some of those sounds out for the actual podcast. And I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for joining us on this awesome 39th birthday of Kurt Ochberger. Happy birthday, my love. And um, give us a visit over at ourbreakfast.club. Leave us a message. You can leave us a video or send us an email, and we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. I get to talk about games tomorrow. So,
Yay, game
yay,
day.
me. Late birthday present.
All right. Aloha. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.